Have you ever received a gift so beautiful, so precious, that you couldn't refuse it? Becky did. A simple golden anklet, given to her by the powerful Chief Badmus, looked harmless at first, but soon, it became her greatest nightmare. Becky had always been known as the most beautiful young woman in her community, not only because of her glowing skin and radiant smile, but because of the way she carried herself with quiet dignity. She lived with her widowed mother who sold fruits at the roadside, struggling to make ends meet, but never allowing hardship to steal her joy. Becky had just graduated from university and was hoping to secure a job soon. But in the meantime, she helped her mother at the fruit stall while dreaming of a brighter future. One day, as she arranged pineapples neatly in a tray, a sleek black car pulled up in front of them. From the tinted window stepped out a man dressed in an expensive agbada, his shoes shining as though polished by the sun itself. He smiled warmly at Becky, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, but lingering longer on her legs as though they held a secret charm. He introduced himself as Chief Badmus, a wealthy businessman known across town for his generosity, and he told Becky's mother that he admired her daughter's hard work and wanted to assist them. He pulled out a neatly wrapped box from his car and extended it toward Becky. At first, Becky's mother protested, insisting that they could not accept gifts from strangers, but the chief laughed it off, saying life was about helping those who deserved a chance. He explained that it was simply a small token of admiration, something to encourage Becky for her discipline and grace. The young woman hesitated, her heart racing, but under the piercing eyes of the wealthy man and her mother's softened resistance, she reached out her hand and accepted the gift. He asked her not to open it there in public, but to wait until she was in the comfort of her home. As he left, his eyes once again glanced at her legs, and for a fleeting moment Becky felt a strange chill run down her spine, though she quickly dismissed it. When they got home that evening, curiosity gnawed at her heart. She unwrapped the gift slowly, her fingers trembling with both excitement and uncertainty. Inside the velvet-lined box lay a sparkling anklet, glittering under the dim light of their kerosene lamp. Her mother gasped at the beauty of the jewelry, whispering that it must be worth a fortune. Becky had never seen anything so exquisite in her life, and for a moment she felt as though Chief Badmus had changed her destiny with a single act of kindness. Without thinking too deeply, she slipped the anklet around her right leg, admiring how it shone against her dark skin. But almost immediately after fastening it, she felt a faint sting in her ankle, like the bite of a mosquito. She brushed it off, thinking it was nothing, and went to bed. That night, however, she dreamt strange dreams. In her sleep, she saw herself walking through a vast forest, but her leg grew heavier and heavier with each step, until it felt like she was dragging chains behind her. She tried to remove the anklet in the dream, but it clung to her skin as though it had melted into her flesh. She woke up sweating, her ankle burning with an unusual heat, and she noticed a faint red mark spreading around the spot where the anklet sat. The next morning, she tried to tell her mother about the discomfort, but her mother only scolded her lightly, saying beauty sometimes comes with a little pain, and she should be grateful for such a precious gift. Becky forced a smile, though inside her fear grew stronger. As days passed, the burning sensation increased, and she noticed her leg becoming weaker. At times she staggered while walking, and her friends at the market began whispering that perhaps she was ill. Still, whenever anyone saw the anklet, they marveled at its beauty and praised her luck to have received such a treasure from a wealthy man. What troubled Becky most was the way people stared at her leg. It wasn't just admiration. It was as if they could see something she could not. Sometimes she thought she heard whispers following her when she walked, voices calling her name from nowhere, echoing in her ears like shadows of an unseen world. She tried to remove the anklet several times, but each attempt failed. The clasp that seemed simple at first had become impossibly tight, digging into her flesh, refusing to let go. That was when she began to wonder if Chief Badmus' gift had truly been a blessing, or if it was something much darker, something she had unknowingly welcomed into her life. Becky tried to go about her daily life, but each step she took reminded her of the strange heaviness in her leg. The once light and graceful walk that people admired had become unsteady. She often stumbled on uneven ground, clutching her mother's arm for support. Her mother noticed her daughter's struggles, but convinced herself it was fatigue or perhaps the effect of standing too long at the market. Becky, however, knew something was wrong. The pain was not ordinary, and at night the anklet seemed to glow faintly, as though it held fire within it. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night to find her leg twitching on its own, moving as though controlled by an unseen force. The more she tried to ignore it, the stronger the pull became. One afternoon, while returning from the stream with a bucket of water balanced carefully on her head, she felt her leg give way. She collapsed by the roadside, spilling the water across the dusty ground. Villagers rushed to her aid, and as they helped her up, many noticed the redness around her ankle. Some shook their heads and muttered under their breath, saying such beauty often comes at a price, while others warned that not every gift should be worn without caution. Becky's mother grew uneasy at these whispers, but whenever she thought of removing the anklet, the stubborn clasp refused to open. Her mother decided they needed medical help. The following week, they scraped together enough money to take Becky to the general hospital in the city. Doctors examined her leg carefully, running tests, pricking needles into her skin, and prescribing several drugs. They said it could be a skin infection or a circulation problem, nothing that rest and medicine couldn't handle. For a while, Becky clung to the hope that science would rescue her. But after finishing the entire prescription, her condition worsened. Her leg grew heavier, her ankle swelling more each day, and the burning sensation spread higher. They returned to the hospital again, and again the doctors looked confused. Some suggested it was a rare disease. Others hinted at possible amputation if the swelling continued. Becky's mother wept bitterly at the mention of such a fate, pleading with them to do more, but their words remained uncertain, their solutions temporary. Disappointed, they tried another hospital in a neighboring town. The same cycle repeated itself. Examinations, tests, bills, and long waits in crowded corridors only to be told that nothing was clear. Some doctors shook their heads and said they had never seen anything like it before. Becky grew frustrated, losing weight rapidly, her once bright eyes now clouded with sleepless nights. Yet, despite her suffering, she convinced herself it was a medical issue. She didn't want to believe the whispers of neighbors who said it was spiritual. She didn't want to accept that the gift she had proudly worn was anything more than ordinary jewelry. As the hospital visits drained their little savings, neighbors suggested traditional healers. At first, Becky's mother resisted, but desperation overcame her pride. They were introduced to a man who promised he could cure any illness, but his words came with a heavy price. He demanded a large sum of money up front, claiming he would prepare a powerful charm to drive away the sickness. Becky and her mother borrowed from relatives and gave him the money, waiting eagerly for relief. He smeared chalk on Becky's leg, tied leaves soaked in oil around her ankle, and muttered incantations for hours. For a moment, Becky thought she felt lighter, but by the next morning the pain returned with double force. When they went back to confront him, he demanded more money, saying the process was not yet complete. Becky's mother realized too late that they had been deceived. Still, they could not stop searching. They went from one healer to another, each one with promises more convincing than the last. One tied cowrie shells to her leg, another bathed her with river water at midnight, and yet another made her drink bitter concoctions that left her vomiting for days. Each time, Becky hoped for a miracle, but each time she was disappointed. Not only did her condition worsen, but their pockets became empty. The little fruit business they relied on began to crumble as her mother sold almost everything they had to pay for one treatment after another. By this time, Becky's leg had begun to look frightening. The swelling stretched her skin until it looked like it would tear. Strange marks etched themselves deeper around her ankle, and at night, she often screamed in her sleep, describing terrible visions of shadows and chains. Her mother grew terrified, but Becky remained stubborn, clinging to the hope that the next healer or doctor would bring the answer. She told herself she was too educated to believe in old women's tales of curses or charms. Yet deep inside her heart, fear gnawed at her, whispering that perhaps she had indeed accepted something she should not have. One evening, as she sat outside the house with Adora, her closest friend, she broke down in tears. "I don't understand anymore," she sobbed. "If medicine can't cure me and all these healers are lying, then what is happening to me? Why is this anklet refusing to come off? Why does my leg feel like it no longer belongs to me?" Adora, holding back tears, urged her to stop wasting money and to consider the possibility that this was not ordinary. Becky shook her head, refusing to accept it, yet her trembling hands and weak voice betrayed the fear she could no longer hide. That night, the pain was unbearable. Becky thrashed in bed, her mother trying desperately to hold her down as she cried and clawed at her burning leg. For the first time, her mother began to think seriously of the whispers about Chief Badmus, about his suspicious wealth and the young women who had fallen ill after crossing his path. She prayed desperately, asking God to show them the truth, because the path of hospitals and healers had only led them deeper into despair. Becky's suffering reached a point where her mother could no longer bear to watch. Each night, the screams grew louder, and each morning, her leg appeared worse than before. The swelling had spread upward, strange dark veins now running along her thigh, and the glowing marks around the anklet seemed alive, pulsing like fire beneath her skin. Neighbors had stopped visiting, afraid of being associated with whatever curse had overtaken her, and whispers filled the community that Becky's days were numbered. Her mother was torn between fear and helplessness, and Becky herself had lost all strength to pretend she was not afraid. She could barely walk, her once graceful steps reduced to a painful limp. One evening, as Becky lay groaning, Adora returned, carrying food her family had sent to help. She looked at Becky's condition and shook her head, tears filling her eyes. She begged Becky once more to stop denying what was clear. "Becky," she whispered, holding her hand, "this is not ordinary. You have been to every hospital, you have swallowed every drug, you have allowed every healer to touch your leg, and yet you are worse. Don't you see? This is not sickness, it is bondage." Becky looked away, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Deep inside, she knew her friend was right, but admitting it meant facing a truth she was not ready for. Still, her mother, who had prayed all night for guidance, suddenly stood up with firm resolve. She said she would no longer sit back and watch her only child fade away. The next morning, without asking Becky's opinion, she prepared to take her to the old prophet on the outskirts of town. The journey was long and slow, Becky leaning heavily on her mother and Adora. Every step was torture, the anklet cutting deeper into her flesh as though resisting their destination. Villagers stared as they passed, some whispering that they were wasting their time, others silently pitying the once beautiful girl who had now become a shadow of herself. When they reached the prophet's small mud hut, the air around it felt unusually heavy, as if silence itself hung over the place. The old man sat outside, his eyes sharp and penetrating, as though he had been waiting for them. The moment he saw Becky's leg, he let out a sigh, shaking his head slowly. Her mother knelt before him, begging for help, and Becky, trembling with weakness, lowered her gaze in shame. The prophet asked her how she got the anklet, and when she explained, his face darkened. He told them that the anklet was not jewelry but a spiritual chain, a device of bondage crafted in darkness. He explained that men like Chief Badmus enriched themselves not only through business, but by exchanging the lives and destinies of the innocent for their own power and wealth. Every gift given was not a gift of kindness, but a trap, a contract in disguise. Becky gasped, her chest tightening, as the memories of the strange way Chief Badmus had stared at her legs flooded back. The prophet continued, saying that the anklet was feeding off her strength, drawing life from her and transferring it to Chief Badmus. That was why no hospital could explain her condition and no healer could cure her. He warned that if nothing was done soon, Becky would not only lose her leg but her life, for her soul was slowly being bound into his covenant. Becky's mother broke down in tears, clutching her daughter, crying out in regret for not refusing the gift when it was first offered. Becky herself felt a deep fear settle in her stomach, but alongside it was anger, a burning rage at the man who had deceived her with a smile and condemned her with a gift. The prophet told them that breaking the chain would not be easy. He explained that the clasp was sealed with blood and oath, and only a higher power could sever it. He lit a small lamp and placed it beside Becky's leg, then sprinkled white powder around the anklet as he prayed in a language that seemed older than the earth itself. Becky's leg thrashed violently, as though something inside it resisted, and she cried out in pain, begging him to stop. Her mother and Adora held her down, tears streaming from their eyes as they watched the battle unfold. The anklet grew hotter and hotter until smoke began to rise from her skin. Becky screamed until her voice grew hoarse, and then, suddenly, with a loud snap, the anklet broke apart and fell to the floor in 2 pieces. The room went silent. Becky collapsed into her mother's arms, trembling but breathing freely for the first time in weeks. The swelling in her leg began to subside slowly, though it remained scarred by the glowing marks that would never completely fade. The prophet warned them that though her life had been spared, she would always carry the reminder of the choice she made. He turned to her with piercing eyes and told her never again to accept a gift without understanding its source. Not every open hand is friendly, and not every gift is free, he said solemnly. Some gifts cost more than gold. They cost your very life. Becky wept as his words sank deep into her heart. She knew she would never forget the pain, the endless nights of suffering, and the shame of realizing too late that her downfall had begun with a moment of carelessness. Her mother held her tightly, whispering promises never to let greed or admiration blind them again. Adora wiped her tears and thanked the prophet, her heart heavy with relief, but also with anger at the evil hidden beneath Chief Badmus' wealth. Word spread quickly through the community about Becky's ordeal, and many began to look at Chief Badmus with new suspicion. But Becky no longer cared about what others thought. She had learned the hardest lesson of her life, that not every gift is meant to be received, and that behind some smiles hide traps that can destroy destinies. From that day, whenever she saw someone being offered a gift too good to be true, she would warn them with her own story, showing the scars on her leg as proof. And though she never walked the same way again, each step she took carried the weight of wisdom, reminding everyone who saw her that life demands caution, and that true blessings never come with chains hidden in their shine.